But the time has come to face your final judgment.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
All systems are full power.
In on that action.
So I'm not gonna front, I wasn't hyped about this game at all when it was announced a year ago, and seeing gameplay at this past E3 didn't convince me that this game would be worth a damn either. But you know, seeing as I've covered the other two games, might as well check this out to complete the trilogy. I gotta say, this has gotta be one of the weirdest games Nintendo's thrown money at. Even weirder than when they funded Bayonetta 2 for the Wii U back in 2014. And Team Ninja handling the project? What the hell? Why make a sequel now in 2019? Oh, well, that makes sense. Either way, the game is out now when it already looks like it will be forgotten about in a couple months. Shit, by the time I upload this video, people are probably already gonna be like, wait a minute, there was an Ultimate Alliance 3? But before we get into why that's the case, we got a plot to go over. So a lot of you are probably looking at the 3 at the end of the title and going, aw shit, do I have to know about the other games before I play this one? Luckily, no. This game's plot has nothing to do with the previous one, so you can hop into this one without worry. In fact, if you watched the last 2 Avengers films, then you already know the gist of this game's plot. Thanos is a power-hungry asshole that wants the Infinity Stones for galactic conquest, and the Marvel heroes gotta stop him by getting to the stones first. It all starts when the Guardians of the Galaxy crew stumble upon a Kree ship that just so happens to have the stones on board, but unfortunately for them, they're being guarded by some of Thanos' peoples. After a brief scuffle, Star-Lord nabs one of the stones and uses it to transport the rest of the stones around Earth. He also accidentally transports him and his crew to the raft, but it ends up being a blessing in disguise as they meet up with Nick Fury and a buttload of other superheroes. They form an alliance, and for the rest of the game, you're on a Dragon Ball hunt for the stones while fighting off these Black Order guys, and some other supervillains along the way. So I've done a complete 180 in how I feel about the look of this game. Looking at the E3 gameplay trailer, I thought this game looked cheap as hell, but after playing through it, it's actually pretty easy on the eyes. I like that they didn't go for a completely realistic look, but instead opted for a blend between cartoony and realistic. The colors are vibrant, and a lot of the environments can honestly be ripped out of a comic book. Massive upgrade over Ultimate Alliance 2, where a lot of the colors were washed out. Everybody in this game looks how they're supposed to, except Star-Lord, who has Super Saiyan hair for some reason. Only gripe I have with the look of this game is that the camera's pulled way too far back this time around. Like, I get that you're dealing with a bunch of enemies that you need to react to, but do I really need a view of the whole damn arena? Well, at least there's no frame rate issues this time around. In fact, this game is like the first 2 games on acid in terms of how fast paced it is. Just look at all this shit that's happening on screen. The other games would have blown up my damn consoles if all this shit went on. The general concept is still the same, with forming a squad of your favorite Marvel heroes and kicking bad guy ass, but the combat this time around is greatly improved. I'm talking about doing these fusion attacks from the second game as regular attacks now, combo strings that aren't stiff, and these new flashy ultimate moves that everybody has now. Have all 4 of your heroes launch that shit together and watch the damage number climb, baby. The only thing that sucks is that they got rid of grabbing enemies for whatever reason. It sucked ball sacks in the second game, but it was one of my favorite things to do in the first game, so that sucks for me. But holy shit, you can actually dash now. You don't get much distance, but it's much better than running in circles like an idiot all the time to avoid attacks. There's also this new stagger system that this game has that seems to be hit or miss for a lot of people. But for me, I can dig it. So how it works is that a lot of the beefier enemies and bosses have this meter that you need to diminish in order to stagger or stun them for a few seconds. When that happens, that's when you can lay down some real damage to these mofos. Now I do realize because of this, a lot of the enemies in this game are damage sponges, but at least it adds a layer of strategy to the combat that was sorely missing from the previous games. In the previous games, combat mostly amounted to keep mashing X and maybe once in a while launch an ability until an enemy goes down. Here you still beat down enemies, but but now you gotta do fusion attacks to break down enemy defenses, which involves management of characters' energy meters. As a result, the game is definitely more challenging than the last couple of games, especially since the amount of enemies on screen have doubled. But it just makes it more satisfying to wipe out an entire room. I heard some criticisms that some of the enemies in this game hit too hard, but the only time where I found that to be the case were with these sniper guys in Wakanda. I don't know what type of ammo these guys are packing, but they should not be able to kill your heroes this quickly. Thankfully, these motherfuckers are only in this mission. Like the first two games, the most fun you're gonna get out of this game is playing co-op with a buddy, but it's a little bit more awkward this time around because there's a big emphasis on doing these signature moves where you and another character have to do a certain ability at the right time. The AI automatically follows your every command, so this is not a problem in single player, but with a human, yeah, no. Unless you have perfect synchronization, you're not going to land these very often. So if you want to get through the game smoothly, then solo play is actually preferred. If you do play local co-op, for the love of God, get a new controller because this half controller shit that the Switch has going on is not where it's at. Didn't really bother to play with any randoms online, and the only reason for that is because Nintendo Online sucks and I refuse to pay for it. But moving on, the character roster in this game is definitely the most impressive of the three games, with a lot of characters making a return with some new faces. Obviously, the cast here is inspired by the recent Marvel movies that came out, and the reason I know this is because the Fantastic Four are nowhere to be seen in this game. Like, damn! I know the last movie was dog shit, but the Fantastic Four is still one of the staple Marvel teams. Oh well, at least you could play as the Hulk this time without spending cash. Thank Lord. You know, I can't even complain about characters not being in this game because I probably wouldn't play as them anyway. And the reason for this is because characters outside your party this time around do not level up with your party. Yeah, you're going to be rocking the same 4 people throughout the entire game because nobody has time to get this many characters up to level. Which sucks for me because in the last 2 games I actually like trying out all the different characters. And leveling up in this game actually matters. If you're not at the recommended level that the game tells you, you're not only going to get your ass kicked, it'll take you forever to stagger enemies. Now you could go and do these Infinity Stone challenges to grind, but for me, I didn't give a shit about any of these. I mean, there's only so many times you can fight off the same enemies and bosses before it starts to get mind-numbing, even with the handicaps that you're given. You gotta do a crap ton of these too if you want to make any sort of progress, and you barely get any rewards for doing so. Yeah, the first game is still king when it comes to cosmetics and side content. I don't know what the hell they got going on here. At least it's better than the second game where they axed all this stuff completely. I'm still not a fan of being limited to just 4 abilities though. Well, at least they brought back the loot system. Sort of. Yeah, not really. So it's pretty weird in this game. You're collecting rocks called ISO 8 that give the usual RPG buffs like percentage of strength, energy, health, and what have you. But the stat increases you get are so minuscule, I don't even know why they bothered. In order to get some real stat increases, you gotta deconstruct these shitty rocks in order to get materials to improve the rocks you want. Sounds fair on paper. The problem is, you barely get anything for deconstructing these rocks. And when you do go and upgrade, the cost far outweighs the percentage increase. It's insane. Suffice to say, I didn't really bother with the management with this stuff for most of the game. I just put stats into this giant skill tree and still managed to sail through the game smoothly. To be fair, you didn't really feel the benefits of the trinkets in the other games either, but at least you didn't have to fuck around with some salvaging system and still got more out of it. But enough of that, what about the bosses and some of the non-combat stuff like puzzles and collectibles? Well, as for the bosses, they're definitely better here than in the last 2 games. Bosses this time around actually have some variety to them in how they fight you. No longer can you get away with wailing on them for minutes straight, especially with the stagger meters that they all have. A lot of the bosses actually have some devastating attack that you actually have to maneuver through this time around. Like with Dormammu, in order to survive this massive fire blast, you gotta pick up this rock that absorbs the attack. Yeah, it sounds pretty stupid when I word it like that. Point is, the past games didn't require you to think at all, even with basic stuff like this. The only gripe I have with a lot of these bosses is that a lot of them rely on the lazy tactic of summoning additional enemies to make the fight harder. As for the puzzles, well, there's barely any. The only one that I remember is this short maze where you have to activate switches to go through. And the only reason I remember this one is because Ratchet & Clank did something similar in Going Commando. I said that the pacing of the last game was go 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 from the very start. This is times 10. There's barely anything else to do aside from beating up guys, which I know is the main part of the game, but it's not like the combat here is A tier. I don't even like it when games spread themselves too thin, but a little bit of variety here wouldn't have hurt. Anyway, it's time to return to the narrative, so here's a damn spoiler warning because I know that this game is new and a lot of people are playing through it. So after collecting most of the Infinity Stones from a bunch of baddies, our heroes meet up with Thane, Thanos' lost son. Thane informs the Alliance that Thanos wants him dead because he doesn't want to pay any more child support, so Thane rolls with the Alliance to find the last stone. After they get the last stone, the Black Order show up and corner our heroes, but Thane gives himself and the stones up to avoid a bloodbath. The Black Order banish our heroes to Hell, with one L by the way, where they get sidetracked by Hela and Red Skull. They soon find themselves in an overran Asgard where they gotta deal with the Destroyer armor, but Odin swoops in and handles things like a boss. After that, he transports our heroes to the Nowhere where a huge battle between these Corp guys and the Black Order are taking place. The Alliance takes out all the Black Order generals one by one, retrieving each stone in the process, but Thanos isn't having any of that, so he swoops in and takes the stones for himself. The final battle ensues with Thanos on top of his rock throne, where despite being able to snap people out of existence, still gets his ass whooped. After that, Thane makes a sudden heel turn where he takes the gauntlet and creates this infinity armor which drives him insane, but it doesn't matter because with Thanos you whoop his ass too. Thanos, being the savage he is, wastes no time telling his son how much of a dumbass he is, and soon after, he takes the gauntlet off of Thane's hand, which causes both of them to disappear, leaving the stones behind. So with the day saved, our heroes take the stones and scatter them across the universe with the fear that Thanos is probably gonna come back later. Yeah, I didn't really think much of this game's narrative. It's just one of those video game stories that's primarily made as an excuse for the action. Thanos is a bad guy, these guys are bad guys, we're the heroes, so let's beat them up. And don't expect the stoic Thanos from the movies that's concerned with overpopulation. This guy is just a hulking asshole, pretty much how he is in the comics, but without him trying to get in bed with death. It's too bad that you don't see his big chin until the end of the game though. You mostly deal with these Black Order goons whose personalities are the equivalent of sandpaper. At least in the first game we saw Dr. Doom plotting and shit. Thanos doesn't show up until later, and that's pretty whack. I do like how they opted to create an original story again, but a lot of it feels like I'm watching a half-assed MCU film. A lot of the jokes try their hardest to be quippy, like you would see in an MCU film, but not a lot of them land. And a lot of the voice performances also try their best to match the movie portrayal of the characters. Again, it's not bad, but nothing here is particularly interesting. They tried with Thane's betrayal at the end, but that shit was forced as hell. So yeah, that's Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. You know, this is one of those games I can't really say is good, but for whatever reason, I still enjoyed the few hours I put into it. With that being said, I'm probably going to trade this in as soon as this video gets uploaded. Do I recommend it? Nah, not really. I mean, if you enjoyed the previous two games, then maybe, but I would wait until a sale because $60 for a game like this is pretty steep. Wait, I totally forgot. This is a Nintendo exclusive, so never mind. You're going to be 80 years old by the time this goes on sale. Just get Fire Emblem instead. I heard that game's pretty good. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this, so until next time.